going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL Strategy Show Marathon Matchups Edition for Week 6. Breaking down everything for this 10-game slate. That's right, 10 games. You got 4 teams on a bye. You got one game on Thursday night, Sunday night, or Monday nighter, and then, of course, the dreaded London game early on the East Coast on Sunday morning. But I'm Dave Loughran. Happy to be with you as always. Over on the Twitters at Loughy_D, and joined by, as always, every single Thursday, Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. What's going on, brother?
Hey, man, so happy to be here. Well, is the London game dreaded because it's in London and it's early for half the country, or because it's Miami and Jacksonville? That is the real dilemma this weekend.
The London game is dreaded. The London games, I should say, plural, are dreaded every year because there's never a good matchup.
Yeah,
that's
all. And one thing I was seeing too is some tweets in London about how there's a lot of NFL fans in London. That's awesome. That's awesome to see that it's going worldwide. But there's not a lot of team-specific fans, so you just see this smattering of jerseys, like the one NFL jersey that they all own, which awesome. But you just see some wild arrays of team threads there in London.
A lot of O.J. Simpson jerseys.
Weird how they made their way out of the States there. No,
I'm just kidding. I mean, but you know that there's probably some extremely obscure jerseys of guys that played for like 2 seasons in the league, but that's the only jersey they have, and they bought it 60% off because they don't really know the NFL. Yeah, I think you're right. There's no real allegiance to any team. And quite frankly, why would there be? It's not like even the Eagles are a team that travel really well, even across the pond, you know, in terms of, or the Patriots, but you're not getting loyal Jaguar fans coming out, a big contingency of Jaguar fans coming out for a London game, even though they play there 8 times a season.
I know. It's all changing, though. I think we're going to see a game in Germany as well soon. So get used to this. If you're not into it, just buckle up. It's not going anywhere.
I get the expansion idea and trying to make more money, but who gives a shit about games in Germany? And like, I don't need it. I don't need it. It's not for me. You excited about it?
I mean, I don't think I really care all that much. Part of that is because I'm in the East Coast, so I don't mind a 9:30 start to a game. I don't mind drinking some coffee and getting a slate started. But I understand it kind of both ways here. They have a big global expansion plan overall, so I think that's what they're gonna aim to do overall, especially with the Jaguars and their owners' relation to big London teams. I could see it expanding, having a team there eventually.
Yeah, sure. I guess. You're not gonna get me up for a game in Hamburg, but
you know what really needs to happen again? I know they're bringing back high-speed flights that go across the Atlantic. If the travel time gets faster and more convenient for teams, then I think it's more viable than it is right now.
That would be cool. But then it would defeat the purpose because everybody would be an American fan in a German stadium.
Hey, I would go see a game in Europe if it was easy.
I would absolutely go. No question about it. But I'm saying as it stands right now, it is of zero benefit to me. Therefore, I don't care. Anyway, Matt, we got 10 games to break down today. Today's show, of course, presented by Prize Picks. Let's kick it off with the highest projected total on the 1 p.m. wave of games. It is the Kansas City Chiefs laying 6.5 on the road against Washington, 55.5 point total. So what we have here essentially is a good offense, yet a team that is in the cellar of their own division at 2-3 in the Kansas City Chiefs. Surprising, right? Still minus 400 to make the postseason, but that's besides the point. With arguably the worst offense in the league against the Washington team, who has failed miserably to live up to expectations on the defensive end and actually should be able to produce a little bit on offense, hence the 55.5 point total. True and legitimate shootout potential for this one, Matt. And I believe Tyreek Hill should be fine. He did sit out of practice with a quad contusion. Edwards-Helaire on the IR. And let's get into it.
Yeah, so Edwards-Helaire is on the IR. That's big. I don't know how that running back split is going to play out. But of course, we're always talking about the Kansas City Chiefs passing game. I saw a great tweet. I'm sorry I can't attribute it to, I just don't remember who it was from. But it says, it looks like Patrick Mahomes this year is trying to score 21 points on every play because of the quality of his defense. And especially when he's playing an offense that is helmed by Josh Allen and just playing at that high of a level as we saw last Sunday, it does feel like every time that defense of Kansas City got on the field, they were giving up a score. So Patrick Mahomes felt this massive sense of urgency. And one thing I will say is the efficiency on an overall level for this offense, this Kansas City Chiefs offense, regardless of the game scripts, have been pretty solid. Even after that disastrous game last weekend, you're still looking at them as the number 2 team in offensive EPA per play. So it's very strange to see them in last place at their division. Ultimately, I think this comes down to the health and availability of their main 2 players, right? If Kelsey and Hill are limited, this offense suddenly feels kind of lacking in weaponry. Like, are we really trusting Mecole Hardman, who did see a spike in targets when Hill was going down, but we've seen a lot of middling play from him. And is Josh Gordon really that attuned to the offense that he can really step into a major role here? I think it's tough. And then you got the backfield that is probably going to be close to a 50-50 split with Darrell Williams and Jerick McKinnon here. I think they're going to score. I think their 31 implied total is fair, but it's pretty high for a team that has a lot of question marks.
Yeah, I hear you. I guess like Hardman's at 6% right now. I don't have an issue with that. Only a 15% target share, but on a team that's throwing basically 40 times a game and has to throw in order to avoid, falling behind, given how bad their defense is. But the most interesting part to me, and I mentioned this yesterday on the ownership and top stack show, is that this is really the first. I'm not saying you weren't able to stack Mahomes with Kelsey and Hill in previous weeks, right? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is this is the easiest week to do it because Travis Kelsey has inexplicably come down to $7,000 on DraftKings. That is absurdly cheap right now. So if you're coming down to $7,000, it is going to open some things up. Again, it's not going to be pretty, but it's going to be easier than it was when both him and Hill were $8,500. You're going to see just a lot of ownership going to Hill and a lot going to Kelsey, despite the fact that he's been a little bit underwhelming lately. I'm not at all worried about that, Matt. These 2 guys, despite all of the issues, I still love these 2 top pass catchers for Kansas City this week.
Yeah, that's fair. And as usual, when they're on the main slate, the Kansas City Chiefs are at the top of our top stack probability tool. And you know what? Comparing it to our expected ownership, we're still seeing them as one of the highest leverage scores. So I'm totally with you. Yeah, so I'm totally with you in going to these top pass catchers. It does give me just a little pause because they are probably going to both Kelsey and Hill. That is, they're probably going to both come in with a questionable tag. But Washington right now, one of my favorite defensive metrics to look at is schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to opposing offenses. That looks at, it tries to contextualize for your opponents going into the game. And right now, the Washington football team is giving up more schedule adjusted fantasy points to opposing offenses than anyone else in the league. And they lean as a pass funnel compared to a run funnel, meaning it's easier to pass on them for Patrick Mahomes in a game where he really wants to bounce back. No, I'm with you there too.
What about on the other side? Now, I do understand as it is right now, and this can change throughout the week. Obviously, the top stack tool moves with ownership as well. The Washington football team has a minus 5.1% leverage score, which is actually the worst on the slate. But I can't help myself looking at some of these guys. Now, the biggest thing for me is, one, I think Taylor Heineke can have a good game. He's cheap. I think he's totally viable in tournaments. I also think that he's going to get some ownership just given the matchup. That's fair. I love Terry McLaurin. If it's a one-off, I don't really care. If it's in a stack, a one-off, a run back, I love Terry McLaurin. Outside of that, though, you're probably not going to get, I don't think you're going to actually get Curtis Samuel this week. De'Ami Brown hasn't been good. He's questionable. Cam Sims, a guy that's even been used scarcely, he's probably not playing. You're going to be left with guys like Adam Humphries, who's coming off, a decent game. But there isn't much there outside of Terry McLaurin and Ricky Seals-Jones, who I like as well this week. He's played every single snap since Logan Thomas went down. But you know that this stack is going to be the exact same players in it in every single lineup.
Right. It's going to be McLaurin. It's going to be one of the Chiefs pass catchers, and it's going to be Heineke. But
Yep.
I will say,
And Ricky
when I
Seals-Jones, I'm telling you, there's going to be a lot of Seals-Jones as well.
Well, quietly, Washington has been one of the most banged up offenses in the skill positions, and their quarterback went down, and still their offense has been just fine. I mean, that's all the credit in the world to Taylor Heineke and his ability to keep this offense afloat, as well as the coaching staff here. It hasn't been perfect, but it has been serviceable. It has been replacement level. And I agree with you. I mean, Terry McLaurin is in such a good spot here. When you talk about game environment, the offense on the other side and their ability to score basically at will most games, and just the need for Washington to keep pace and having no one around him. I mean, they're playing players like DeAndre Carter, who's their return man, because they're just out of players really to play. De'Ami Brown was out last week too. He might be back this week, but yeah, Curtis Samuel, I don't expect him to play. So suddenly you're looking at a really concentrated offense in a game where it looks like you're going to have to score. So I don't mind even doing Kelsey, Hill, and Heineke, just leveraging off that. That's why even when we're using a top stacks tool, we want to just lean on it to make our decisions. We don't want to necessarily have some line in the sand, some rigidity in our thought. We can still use Heineke because of the game environment, how strong we believe in offense being a big part of this game.
Absolutely. Now, what about, and for what it's worth, I just want to put this out there. I do like McLaurin this week a lot, even though there's going to be ownership here. It's just such a phenomenal spot. And I like Seals-Jones. Yeah, if he's relatively high owned, I get it, but he saw a couple red zone targets last week. He's on the field for every single play. So in a spot like this, particularly when they're dealing with so many injuries, I understand that they're chalky. So if you were to go away from that, it makes sense. But this Kansas City defense, unless they figure something out real quick, this team's in serious trouble. I mean, this defense is really that bad. So what do you do with Gibson though? Because he revealed before last week's game that he was dealing with that stress fracture in his shin. He still saw 20 carries last week, albeit 20 inefficient carries, 2 touchdowns, 2 receptions on 2 targets. So heavily involved, 22 total looks. And now you go up against a Kansas City defense that isn't just bad in the secondary, Matt. They're bad in the run game as well.
Yeah, they're not really good anywhere when you're giving up a bottom 3, the most in terms of allowing the most points per play. Kansas City is giving it up both on the run and through the air. I think with Antonio Gibson, this is one of those situations where we just had something revealed to us as the public that was already true. I think he was already playing through this injury. When he scored against Buffalo on that massive 73-yard catch and run, he was playing through that injury. So nothing has really changed here for me, except for the fact that J.D. McKissic is still around, possibly taking quality opportunities, that's targets and goal line carries, away from Gibson. That's why I think you're going to see a lot of variability in Gibson's play from week to week, or his production, I should say, from week to week. But I see a player this week whose projection is right in line with salary-based expectations. Now, 6,500 on DraftKings, that's running back 8 on the slate. That's pretty high. So you're playing him for game environment, as we've been talking about. But I just see it as more of a boom-bust play. So in cash games, I'm saying no. In tournaments, when you're game stacking this game, you don't have to go away from Gibson. You can certainly include him.
I agree. Now, let me ask you one more thing. We talk about all of the injuries, all of the uncertainty in the pass catching core for Washington. Could this be one of those weeks where it ends up being J.D. McKissic that puts up the big score and nobody touches him?
Yeah, it's always nice to look at a player who we know is going to be on the field for a significant amount of snaps. He's had 45%, 40%, and 44% snap share over the last 3 weeks, McKissic has. So he's certainly going to be on the field. He's top 30 at his position, just on the players on this slate in expected fantasy points. And like you said, nobody's going to be on him. 2.3% projected ownership right now. In a pass-friendly game, I could see it, but it's so variable. It's even more variable than Antonio Gibson. He only had 6 total opportunities last week. 12 the week before. In week 2, he had 10, but he's had a game with 2 total opportunities. So you're talking about a large field tournament play only, and that's why his ownership is so low.
Yeah, that's it for me. Large field tournaments, but Could you get a game like we saw against the Giants where it became McKissick day and he just started racking up receptions? It's possible. It depends on the game script here, of course, because I would think Washington would still want to run if they could, but I don't know if they'll be able to. Anyway, Matt, we spent a good amount of time on this game, but it's just such a good game on all fronts that we really can't ignore it. I will be stacking a lot of this one. There's no doubt. I get that it'll be popular, but one of the things I'll try to do is, you know what? You can stack popular games and you can get different elsewhere.
Absolutely. And if you're really going heavy on the game stack, then quarterback, running back becomes more viable, not less. And we didn't really touch on it a lot, but both Darrell Williams and Jerick McKinnon have projections that are slightly ahead of salary-based expectations, making them slight values.
All right. Next up on the docket, LA Chargers. What are we at? Against Baltimore, 2.5-point dogs in Baltimore, 52.5-point total. We just saw an amazing Monday Night Football game between the Ravens and the Colts. You know, it's funny. I wanted to bring something up to you, right? Remember we were talking about like how if they lose that game, Wentz could be done. We didn't consider a couple things. We didn't consider how bad that division is, that they're 1-4 now, and they're still, for all intents and purposes, in the thick of it. I'm not trying to get off course here. Matt, look at their upcoming schedule. Their next 8 games are absurdly soft. You might see the Colts after the next 8 games. So after 13 games, I'm not kidding. You might see them at like 8 and not 8 and 5, at like 7 and 6 and tied for first in the division. That's how bad that division is. And they get to face all of them twice. So just thought I'd throw that out there. But
yeah, and Ron Rivera said he wished that his 7-9 team had missed the playoffs so that they would learn more. So, you know, maybe the Colts just should have a mediocre record and not make the playoffs regardless of their AFC South status. No, but you're absolutely right. You need to AFC South adjust the Colts' expectations going forward just because the rest of that division besides Tennessee is just a joke. Now, heading into this one, though, Baltimore's defense is clearly susceptible. And I'll make one last point about that Indy team is that they certainly don't have another quarterback on that roster who can play as well as Carson Wentz did last night. Let's not take anything away.
Carson Wentz wasn't bad on Monday.
He wasn't bad at all last Monday, but I digress. Baltimore's defense isn't what it has been in previous seasons as well. I'm noticing in that same metric, schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, they are actually right above league average, meaning it's slightly easier than the average team to actually score fantasy points on the Ravens, which feels just all sorts of wrong. Now, it is a little bit of a running back funnel compared to a receiver funnel, but this is a really interesting game where I think we just have 2 really strong offenses, 2 defenses that are closer to average than they are superior, that I think that shootout potential is just really high here. We talked about the highest total game just a moment ago, but if you talked about the game that went the most over its expected total, I think here is my highest probability.
All right. I hear you, man. I mean, we just saw the Chargers and Browns go for 89 total points last week. We saw the Ravens pretty vulnerable defensively, like you said. Close spread. This game should be competitive. It's going to be a fun game to watch as well. There's no question there.
Yeah.
When you look at the Chargers, though, Mike Williams wasn't practicing, but I feel like it's a maintenance day. There's so many Q tags all over the place that I'm not even going to mention. I'm not even going to mention all of them because my guess is that most of them are just maintenance days and they'll play. If it's serious, we'll talk about it like with McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook and such. But Mike Williams has been just purely dominant, Matt. All but 1 week, he has been fantastic. And now you've got him coming into week 6 as the wide receiver 3 behind Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill. And he's only 3 and 4 points behind them or 4 and 3 points behind them respectively. So he has been that good. There's no denying how good Mike Williams has been this season.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of play in Mike Williams that I always get roasted by because he's overperforming his expectation so much and so often that I keep getting burned over and over and over again, thinking it's going to regress back to Keenan Allen. And let's not pretend that Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler as well aren't getting huge shares of this offense, but on a per target and a per opportunity basis. What else can you say about Mike Williams other than he's been spectacular? Right now, he's at almost 5 DraftKings points per game over expectation, while still ranking in the top 5 wide receivers in expected fantasy points. So that also talks to the quality of this offense. First of all, Justin Herbert and new offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi feel like a match made in heaven. Like, this offense in general looks like one of the most effective and efficient teams in the league. And I want to target all these players. Right now we have Austin Eckler, who's the second running back in terms of salary on the slate. Our projections come in ahead of salary-based expectations. He's at 7.2 fantasy points over expectations per game. And when you have a slew of players at or above expectation like this, that means the quality of the offense and likely the quarterback play and play calling is well above average. That's certainly what we have here in Los Angeles.
Let me ask you something. When you talk about fantasy points above expectation, does the expectation metric change if they continue to produce numbers like that?
No,
or is expectation on just like a slide? Is it the same for everyone? You know what I mean? Like, how do you calculate expectation for someone like Mike Williams if he does this for 10 straight weeks?
No, great question. Great question. So what you want to do is you want to use historical data, including all the data that's already coming in from this season, to predict what it would be at a league average. That way, when we're looking at fantasy points over expected, we're really just comparing what did you do on that usage, which is all expected fantasy points is, compared to the rest of the league. So when we see everyone on a team have over expectation, that means the team itself is above average in terms of its per play performance. That's what we're seeing with the Chargers. We wouldn't want to adjust that necessarily, because if there was some sort of change in personnel, we wouldn't be able to regress it back to whatever league minimums or league averages we would expect it to go to.
Gotcha. Is it reasonable to say that Mike Williams might just be better and different than he's ever been?
I hope so. I really, really hope so. And you know what? Scheme matters in the NFL. And, we talk about all these spreadsheet numbers, but from a very simplistic standpoint, this was the quote Michael Thomas role in New Orleans. And Joe Lombardi said as much when he came into Los Angeles this offseason. And sure enough, Mike Williams has absolutely thrived there. Now, we keep referring to how well Williams is playing. One thing that has to be said is that Keenan Allen is still incredibly involved. And when you look at expected fantasy points, they're essentially dead even. But the touchdown upside and I wouldn't say luck, but the big play upside for Mike Williams in this offense right now is just simply higher. I think you're going to see Keenan Allen positively regress at some point this season, but I'm having trouble betting against Williams anymore.
No question. And you would think that Keenan Allen ultimately, just on an offense this good and efficient, will find his way sooner than later. But Austin Eckler's been dominant too. I mean, what do we do with Austin Eckler on a week where, let's assume McCaffrey plays? Matt Rule now says he's 50-50 to play. It's just the wires getting crossed up are crazy. Like, I'm pretty sure McCaffrey, if it was his decision, would have played last week and handled every snap if he was allowed to, right? There's no doubt. Like, he wants to play, but he's now 50-50 to play. Austin Eckler is, so in terms of salary, Christian McCaffrey's 8,800. I think you could argue that if he's healthy and he's not limited, that's still a good price point on someone like him. Eckler is 7,900. Then you have Dalvin Cook. It's all the way down at 77. Aaron Jones at 73, but that usage has been a bit concerning lately. How does Eckler slot into this running back tier for you? He's basically if you put McCaffrey in the elite tier by his lonesome, Eckler is atop the high tier for week 6.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I'm not moving away from this offense. I'm not moving away from a high game total. I started this segment off saying that the Ravens suddenly look like a team that's susceptible to opposing running backs, and Eckler's got this backfield all to himself. He's just been fantastic this season. 2 top 3 running back performances among all running backs on the week over the last 2 weeks, and he's got 4 straight in the top 8 running backs. I mean, this guy's on fire right now, and again, talking about comparing roles isn't always a great thing to do, but when you have such a similar skill set to Alvin Kamara, it's not surprising to see Austin Eckler absolutely thriving in this new scheme, in this new offense. And he only has to do it on somewhere between 60 to 80% of snaps. He can actually come out for some low value touches, still get all the goal line carries, all the valuable receiving work. We saw him run 35 routes in that shootout last weekend, 5 targets in back-to-back games. Actually, he's had 5 or more targets in 4 straight weeks after that 0 target performance in week 1. I really have no concerns here. Even if McCaffrey plays, I'm still going to find ways to get to Eckler.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, simply put, when you're this involved in an offense, particularly as a pass catcher on full PPR sites, the floor is going to be pretty high. And this game could shoot out, as you mentioned, Matt. What are you doing with I want to speed it. Well, we don't have to speed it up because we got a bunch of games that just have lower totals. We want to hit on all these good ones first. So yeah, we're going in order of high total to lower. Any interest in the tight ends for LA right now?
Actually, I'll play them because Donald Parham had the touchdowns. People are going to be off Jared Cook. I do see that he is sort of a chalkier play amongst the tight ends, 7.9% projected ownership, but I'll go there. His projections are way above his salary-based expectations. Parham is a large field tournament play only, but hey, we saw him score. We saw him getting the touchdown, getting the end zone, and he's an athletic guy. You could do worse playing him as a low-owned option in a great game environment.
We could see the NFL debut of 27th overall pick Rashad Bateman this week. You and I, when we, well, actually, no, it was Kajeski and myself. He was expected to come off of the IR for Monday's game. And then it turned out that when you and I did the deeper dive, that he wasn't going to play. But I got to say, we already know this, that Lamar Jackson is unbelievable. I mean, it's difficult to fathom just how good he is from a fantasy standpoint. He is 14th, in total yards. If you were to put him up against every team in the league and then just Lamar Jackson and not Baltimore, he's 14th in total yards. Matt, he's 5th in passing yards and 8th in passing yards, I think, and 5th in total rushing yards, or vice versa. But he's just that good. And you've got to give credit to Marquise Brown. Outside of that dreadful game against Detroit, Marquise Brown has actually looked to some extent like an alpha receiver this year, and he has benefited greatly from Lamar Jackson really being able to get the ball downfield to him consistently. And then you saw the coming out game for Mark Andrews for the 2021 season. Consecutive touchdowns, consecutive 2-point conversions was one of the main reasons they won that game. It was a full-on functioning offense in the second half that resulted in monstrous fantasy points across the board. Can that happen again this week?
Yes, absolutely. Ooh. And they might have to if their defense is playing as middling as they have been, allowing Justin Herbert and company to score at will, which is a possibility here. Lamar Jackson, not bad for a running back, right? I mean, this guy has been unreal as a passer this year. I mean, I'm thrilled to see it, honestly. One of the stats that always has been brought up over and over since he's been a pro is that he continues to improve in terms of his accuracy, his completion percentage, every year. But because of scheme, I know we're talking about scheme a lot this week, because of his run-focused scheme, he wasn't really showing off those improvements, just incremental. We could see it in the advanced metrics, but in terms of overall passing production, it really wasn't there. Boy, has that changed this year. Now, they were forced into that game script because they were playing from behind and they were behind by a lot. So in the second half, they had to pass simply because of the way that the score worked out. What we see in our advanced stats tool on Awesemo.com is that their game adjusted rush rate is still number 1 in the league. And Lamar Jackson is doing this crazy level of production as a passer and now gets a first round wide receiver back into the fold. It couldn't come at a good enough time because Sammy Watkins appears to have his annual problems with a hamstring. Not to say that he's definitely going to be out, but at this point Thursday, his status is definitely questionable. And you said it, Marquise Brown hasn't necessarily gotten complete alpha wide receiver targets. We're not talking about, one of the high-end offense levels of opportunity, but the expected fantasy points, again, comparing the usage to the league average, he's 9th among all wide receivers on this slate in expected fantasy points with 15.8. And he's been well over that in terms of efficiency, almost 5 fantasy points per game over expectation, something only 5 wide receivers on this slate have done.
We fading this run game, right?
This is so hard. I mean, Devonta Freeman getting quality opportunities near the goal line, but Latavius Murray getting more of the snap share. Tyson Williams is in there too. Good luck in large field tournaments playing a rusher other than Lamar Jackson in this offense.
Yeah, I want nothing to do with it, but I can tell you this much. I have some pieces of this LA Rams team for sure against the New York Giants. 48.5 point total. Rams laying 10 points on the road. The injuries have mounted to the point in New York where they've run out of room to stack the bodies, Matt. I mean, there is just no Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Saquon Barkley. There's more, and I honestly can't. Oh, Kenny Galladay being another one. It looks like Kenny Galladay will likely be out. Shepard said he's going to play. We don't know what's up with Slayton. And Joe Judge said that Daniel Jones is, on track as far as the recovery goes, but we don't know if he's going to play either. So this game could either be, and I don't want to say competitive, but this game could be an absolute bloodbath, or it could be something that doesn't look quite as bad. But really, when you look at the Rams, you've got Matthew Stafford, who has had really just one bad game. And then you have Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, who had a explosive game last time, albeit a touchdownless one. And then Tyler Higbee at tight end, who is going to get some red zone looks himself. What are we doing with the Rams this week?
We're playing the Rams. Absolutely. I mean, it's that easy. Darrell Henderson, I think, is one of the best values on the slate. And I'm going to the passing game. Cooper Kupp is a little bit down in salary, wide receiver 5 right now. Projections ahead of salary-based expectations. Robert Woods, wide receiver 13. Projections kind of right in line with salary-based expectations. But just with a 10-point favorite, I feel like the probability of the Rams offense failing in this spot against a Giants defense that is 4th worst, that's easiest for opponents in terms of fantasy points allowed this season, and they lean towards being a passing funnel versus a rushing funnel. I'm all over Matthew Stafford. The thing I just want to add again is that Darrell Henderson will be involved in the passing game, and I think that you can stack him with a quarterback here if you want to get away from the typical Kupp Stafford stack. But I really, really like them this week, and they're showing up pretty high in our top stacks tool as well.
I like Henderson a lot this week as well. He's pretty popular. He's going to be getting some ownership, no doubt. Sonny Michel got mixed in last week, even got a goal line carry after Darrell Henderson returned from whatever minor ailment that was in the first half. I still don't know, dude. Like, whatever. But this is going to be one of those teams that has a lot of potential. It is funny to me, though, because on the other side, you look at it and your initial thought is just a reflexive gag, right? It's just not good. But Devontae Booker, if we're just talking about volume alone, Matt, and you and I care about volume, we care about what type of quality touches they're getting. Granted, in terms of high value opportunities, I can't say you're going to get many red zone opportunities from Booker, but he was on the field for all but one snap after Barkley went down. Ran a route on 81% of dropbacks, whether it be at Daniel Jones or Mike Glennon. Rushed for a touchdown when Jones was out there. Caught a touchdown from Mike Glennon. It is one of these areas where I feel like I wish he was a bit cheaper. But last year, and I mentioned this on yesterday's show, Wayne Gallman from week 7 through 14 is the clear lead back on an awful Giants offense that tied with the Jets for fewest offensive touchdowns in the league at 1.6 per game. Wayne Gallman was the RB7 over that period of time. So is it possible that massive volume alone can propel you to quality enough performance? I think it is. It's just a matter of how much are we going to need from Devontae Booker in order to get there. But I think the volume will be significant, Matt, in this game, assuming Barkley, who's doubtful, is going to be out.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be there. Assuming Barkley's out, right? Man, this feels a little bit like fake chalk. But then I've seen that projected ownership is actually meh. Like he's around 10.4% projected ownership right now.
Yeah.
It's not that high. The Rams are 24th that's bottom 10 in the NFL in yards per carry allowed, and they're closer to league average in points per play allowed. I'm seeing them as a little bit above average in fantasy points, schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. A lot of that has to do with their offense scoring points, forcing opposing offenses to try to keep pace. It's really just not the worst play. Like you said, the usage is going to be there. The salary, it's not true free square level, but 5,400 on DraftKings, you could do a whole lot worse. You're certainly not getting that much usage at that salary tier very often. Yeah, I'm fine with it, basically because of the Rams offense forcing the Giants offense to do something, and Booker being a player on the field every play.
And to be clear, in no way am I saying I'm enamored with Devontae Booker. I just think I'm always fascinated by this type of player in this type of situation, right? Like bad offense, sure. Big dog, might be on the field for 100% of the plays. That's all.
Yeah, it's true. And you know what? The fact that the ownership is a little bit subdued is the only reason I'm kind of considering it. If everyone was all over it, I'd be like, don't play a bad player in a mediocre spot.
If Booker was chalk, I might not have brought him up outside of saying Booker's chalk. I'm not going there, you know? I think most people are going to look at this spot and here's what I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Darrell Williams ownership comes up considerably, because right now he's at the same as Booker, but he's also $500 cheaper. And I wouldn't be shocked if Devontae Booker's comes down considerably as well by the time we get to Sunday. Just given the game scenario, the fact that they're 6.5-point dogs against Washington and he's $500 less expensive.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And also, as we get more clarity about the New York Giants, the rest of their offense, who's playing and who's not. I mean, the quotes from Coach Joe Judge about Kadarius Toney, they scared the hell out of me at the start of this week about how, I think he said something about, we don't think it's season ending or anything like that. I thought, oh man, is this guy going on IR? Because I did notice that his ankle got taped up, but he was also making these leaping, insane grabs, these great change of direction plays on that taped up ankle. So I figured, okay, he's fine. Then he throws the punch, gets ejected. Then Judge has those quotes. It looks like he's going to just rehab it, work with the trainers, and should be able to play through it. But he's really the only bright spot on this whole offense. I mean, breaking Odell Beckham's single game record for a rookie receiver is no small feat. And, you know, I don't know if we're going to see that type of target share or that type of production from Toney every single week. And now his salary is creeping up. His projection compared to salary-based expectation does not look good on Awesemo.com. But still, I'm not sure I'm going to have zero of the only player who I deem as good on the field. I guess Sterling Shepard, too, if he plays. But I think I am going to have Kadarius Toney, just assuming this team has to score because the Rams are scoring points on the other side.
I get it. You have to. Now, I'd much rather it be Daniel Jones. I'd also much rather most of the receiving core be out for New York. If you're like, if Slayton and Shepard are coming back, even if Galladay's out, are you still getting to a lot of Toney at 5,600?
Yeah, because of the points being scored on the other side.
Gotcha.
Now it's a situation where I'm fine with it because of the Rams.
The Cincinnati Bengals laying 3 points against Detroit, 47.5-point total here. Joe Burrow's fine. He went for that throat, whatever it was, I don't even know, contusion or whatever, just went to the hospital. It was obviously precautionary. He's back, good to go. No worries there. Jamar Chase is a stud, bona fide stud. And then you've got T. Higgins, who returned, was underwhelming, Matt, 5 of 7, 32 scoreless yards. But he's still been someone that's actually targeted frequently, still leads the team in red zone targets this season, despite missing 2 games. And then Tyler Boyd, who we know he's good, but how much do you love a guy with a 2-yard ADOT? And I'm obviously, it's hyperbole, but you get the point. A lot of the stuff he's going to see underneath and short routes. So it's a different types of players for all of these guys. But what stands out to me is, what are we doing when it comes to ownership, right? This feels like one of the best spots to really evaluate where ownership is coming in on these guys. Jamar Chase at 10% right now, Higgins at 11, Boyd at 7.9, and then Joe Mixon at 6.6. Meanwhile, almost identically priced DeAndre Swift is coming in almost 3 times as high. So floor is yours, Matt. Break down this Bengals team against an awful Lions defense.
Well, that's the first part. The Lions defense is someone that we pray against all season long. We know that they are going to give up huge points, and usually through the air. I mean, Justin Jefferson had the most effortless 100-yard game I can remember. It almost felt like he did nothing and had 100
He had 100
yards
in the first half, by the way.
Yeah, unbelievable. And they did make some adjustments, and they kind of slowed him down a little bit from there. But still, this Cincinnati offense has really been surprising to me. And I've said this on previous shows. Their volume is way, way down, but their efficiency is way, way up. So credit to the coaches, to Joe Burrow, and to Jamar Chase, who has people comparing his rookie touchdown rates to people like Randy Moss. Now, let's not forget Randy Moss had an insane November and December, like insane, out of his mind, November and December of his rookie year. So he's got a lot of work to do if he wants to be compared for the rest of the season like that. But what can you say? The man has 7.6 fantasy points over expected right now. That's tops among all wide receivers on the slate. And that's why he's got a salary at 6,700. That's well above Higgins and Boyd. And so what we're seeing with this offense that's been efficient, playing a bad defense in the Lions, people are just saying, okay, I don't know, I'm playing the cheapest one. That's T. Higgins, and that's why his projected ownership is actually highest among the three. This is a great moment to pay up, to be contrarian. I'm not saying Jamar Chase is going to catch a touchdown in every single game, but we're at the point where we're pretty darn sure this guy is a game changer. This guy is good, and that's why his salary continues to creep up. Personally, I'm going to enjoy the ride until he's a premium tier receiver. So I'll definitely be paying him against just a terrible Lions secondary.
I don't have any disagreements for any of those guys. And Jamar Chase is just spectacular. I don't mind Higgins, though, because the price point on Higgins is going to open up a lot. Like Higgins at 5,300, that is something that, again, you can play guys. The idea of this show and of our ownership show and the tournament strategy show isn't to say don't play anyone that's getting ownership. Obviously not. But, just to be careful of how you're constructing rosters. Now, Matt, here is a spot where I will admittedly likely get burned, but I'm probably going to go there anyway if ownership remains static on this one or doesn't move much throughout the next few days leading up to Sunday. Joe Mixon. So 6%, okay, projected ownership right now. Everyone talks about how bad the Detroit Lions pass defense is. Their run defense has been crushed. No team has allowed more fantasy points to opposing running backs this season. They have really struggled to defend opposing back. I mean, look what Madison did last week. Essentially, just go ahead and look at Detroit. Anytime they faced particularly a bell cow back, they've got smashed by him. Aaron Jones, wasn't that the Aaron Jones 3 receiving touchdowns game?
That might have been San Francisco. I've got it all mixed up. It was one of them. It was Detroit.
It was, because now that I think about it, because Detroit went up early in that game. But
you're right.
David Montgomery, before he got hurt, crushed them, roasted them. Essentially anybody. Oh, and Elijah Mitchell had 100 yards in his first game ever on sub 20 carries. They've been torched. And the problem is that their offense isn't good, so teams will just be okay with running the football against them. Joe Mixon was limited last week. Zach Taylor made it a concerted effort to do so. However, even though he only saw 11 touches, he saw 11 touches on, 17 snaps? So when he was out there, he was touching the ball. And if you look at him this week and you assume, and I could be wrong here, but if you assume that they limited him last week, and now he's going to be good to go. And Samaje Perine's on the COVID-19 reserve list. Who knows if he plays? You got a 6-round pick and a rookie and Chris Evans behind them, and that's it. If that's the case, I'm willing to get to Mixon. Before last week, when he only had 10 carries because he was hurt, he was second in the league in rushing attempts behind only Derrick Henry. So yeah, I think there is a lot of opportunity here. If he's truly going to come in at 6% ownership, I'm willing to die on that hill, and I don't even have to get a ton of him. Even if I'm a little bit overweight on Joe Mixon, it's a spot where I think he could have 2 touchdowns and 150 yards if he's at full capacity.
I don't want to add too much because I think that was really eloquently said. So the only thing I'll add to it is that's exactly what I'm seeing in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. The Lions defense, of course, is below average, meaning easier for opposing offenses, but it's not through the roof because teams don't have to do so much offensively. However, when you compare fantasy points allowed to receivers versus running backs, they are the biggest running back funnel, meaning allowing more fantasy points to running backs in the entire league. So that just backs up your point even more.
For sure, man. And again, there's risk because if Mixon doesn't play at full capacity and Taylor decides to limit him again, maybe they're up, then it's ugly. But I'm willing to take some shots there, especially given, and here's a segue for you, Matt, that DeAndre Swift is getting a lot of ownership. I don't blame him. Getting a lot of high quality opportunities. He is getting most of the goal line opportunities too, even if Jamal Williams is getting a lot of those rushing attempts that he isn't, and the clear pass catching back. How do you approach a guy like Swift this week?
Oh, I love Swift. Also, chat in here is backhanded complimenting you because you got called eloquent. They're like, how often do you get called eloquent?
Bullshit, no, I love man. I speak well.
Speak good sometimes. No, I love Swift. Projection ahead of salary-based expectation. And yes, the ownership is creeping up, but that's because people are understanding the value of a target compared to a regular rushing carry. This is a player in DeAndre Swift who's getting goal line work much more often this season. And if you look at expected fantasy points, which is going to heavily weight targets and goal line carries like we do, he's second among all running backs on this slate. Now, that changes if players like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook are playing, sure. But when you're talking about the running back 10 in salary, I have no problem there. There is a way to fit him in to so many different lineup builds, and the usage is there. The only thing that concerns me about targeting players in this game is the pace of play for both teams. Right now in our advanced stats tool, the Detroit offense, their adjusted pace of play is 28th in the league. The Bengals, 31st in the league. So what this signals to me is these two teams might be okay just playing some sort of rushing or running back based like slog of a game that's fairly slow that would limit the total plays in the game, making people just slightly less fantasy viable than we might think.
How about the passing game here? We don't need to spend a ton of time on it, but with Quintez Cephas on the IR, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, TJ Hawkinson, who's really just struggled recently after just firing out of the gate through the first 2 weeks. Quick take on this, if there's anything that appeals to you.
Hawkinson's hurt, man. That's what it is. He's missing practice. There's some sort of nagging injury, and I hope he can get through it. But he's the only player who's anywhere near something other than large field tournaments. I'm fine with Hawkinson's salary right in line with projection. 4th on the slate in expected fantasy points, 4th in salary. None of these other players appeal to me. Amon-Ra St. Brown did get 7 targets, but I think this receiving core is still getting sorted out with Quintez Cephas now out for the year. It's real ugly. It's real ugly beyond Hawkinson.
I don't think I politely requested likes yet on this show. I don't even know if I said we're happy to have you guys with us, but hey, why not wait till the room fills up anyway? Happy to have you guys with us. For real, if you haven't hit that thumbs up, that would be greatly appreciated. Maybe get this baby up to over 100 while we're doing the marathon matchup stream today. I know you guys enjoy hanging out with us. It's a longer show. We'll be shorter today. We're going to get Jordan out of here a little bit early. We're good, dude. Do not doubt me. Don't tweak your, all right, I'm going for 3 hours. Fuck it. I don't even care. No, really though, we'll be fine. We got 10 games, but subscribe to that channel if you haven't done so yet and hit that thumbs up. And if you haven't joined the channel, see those beautiful badges that you've got next to Steven's name, our boy Tulsa Dog. I've got one in there, and all the custom emojis coming up and some other fun stuff. You can hit that join right below that thumbs up after you hit it. Thanks, guys. All right. Who do we have up next, Matt? So we have, Minnesota, Carolina. I don't know if Dalvin Cook's going to play. His status and McCaffrey's status have been in flux over the past 2 weeks. They're facing off against each other this week. That's really what the biggest question mark here for both of them, because I will say if Dalvin Cook plays, I'm still worried that he's going to be mixed in with Alexander Madison, and that's a concern.
Yeah. Boy, this one's really fun to look at with all these injuries. I mean, these are the two most dynamic players on both of these teams. Not taking anything away from the dynamic receivers on both sides, but these are the engines of their respective offenses in Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. And the other thing the Vikings have to consider is that they have a bye week coming up in week 7. So they can rest Dalvin Cook for more time if they choose to keep him out this week. I think that's very possible. But I also think there's a situation where if the guy is remotely healthy, how are you keeping him off the field? I don't know how you tell a guy he can't play. With both teams in sort of middling spots in their division, actually the Carolina is 3-2, and with the NFC kind of meh overall, they have decent playoff shots right now. So I think McCaffrey is probably more likely to play simply because he wants to get in there for a competitive team. With Cook, it's definitely tougher. This game, especially with Carolina's defense being much improved, I don't really feel the need to get to Cook at his super high salary unless I'm thinking of it as the leverage contrarian play. It just doesn't look great from a projection standpoint right now.
Carolina at the current time is plus. Wow, really? What do you think their odds are to make the postseason?
Wow. I don't know. I don't know.
Plus 250.
That's surprising. Is that just the quality of their division? Because New Orleans is also 3-2, and the NFC West is going to have some. Yeah,
it's got to be right. I don't know. Yeah, the NFC West is probably going to have a couple
at least two.
Cards, right?
But it's different now that Wilson's out. We'll see.
Big difference, yeah. Well, it is and it isn't. Then you just get teams that beat up on Seattle maybe that are in the division. I don't know. Seattle will find a way to stay competitive. I actually do believe that. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they'll find a way to not get steamrolled every week. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. And this is the one piece of analysis that I want to give on this game before, Matt, you break down the wide receivers. If McCaffrey does play, I will definitely look to get some McCaffrey. I know we have the Kansas City stacks. They're expensive. There's a lot of good, high-priced players on this slate. But McCaffrey is so good, so dynamic, so involved. You're looking at a guy that is very likely going to see 30 looks or 30 touches, which he saw 30 looks and 30 touches over his first 2 games. If he comes back and he's not limited, you're just going to get insane volume again. I think 8,800 is totally fine. He was 9,900 in week 2. So think about that. What else are you doing here?
If you play, if he's in, you play him. With Christian McCaffrey, it is that simple. With both these receiving cores, they're so talented that you probably don't move away from them entirely, but it is worth mentioning that both of these defense right now rank pretty far above average in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. Right now, the Carolina Panthers, we were making all these schedule adjustments, but at a certain point, a certain amount of weeks, this defense is just high quality. Right now, they're number 2 toughest for opposing offenses in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, giving up almost 20 points below league average in total fantasy points. So that does give me pause about Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Now, do you full fade those players? Probably not. They're just simply too talented. Both, especially Justin Jefferson, his expected fantasy points, remember, that's just a measure of usage. It's still top 10 among all wide receivers. But then you're talking about a player who's 4th among wide receivers in salary. That's where it gets tough. I'm fine going to either, but really it's because I'm choosing this game as a contrarian game stack and not necessarily because the player looks like a great value this week compared to others.
Okay. Anything else on either side?
DJ Moore, you can play him. Robbie Anderson, show me something, man. He's completely underperforming expectation. Moore, almost 2 fantasy points over expectation. Anderson, 3 points under his fantasy points expectation.
The next game up with Green Bay and Chicago is interesting to me because Devontae Adams, any single week, can pop off. The guy's volume is incredibly high. Essentially, if you're looking at someone like Devontae Adams, you're playing him in any spot with confidence. And I'm not saying in tournaments you have to, but just in the sense of, can he give you 18 targets in a game? Yes, he can. He has, Matt, he has 45 targets over his last 3 games. And the one against Pittsburgh, it's like he was, scarcely used. They didn't really need him. And he still had 11 looks, 16, 11, 18 over his last 3. This guy is a volume monster. And if you wonder if it's going to subside, well, unless Randall Cobb is catching multiple touchdowns in a game, probably not, because Marquez Valdes-Scantling's on the IR. You have Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb and like Robert Tonyan. There's nobody else here. So again, similar to what we said about someone like Christian McCaffrey, if you want to play Davante Adams, you play Davante Adams.
Never saying no to you playing Davante Adams. Davante Adams, one of the few wide receivers in the league where there are a few running backs you could put in this category where the defense knows it's coming and you can't stop it anyway.
Yeah.
That is another level. And that's
Michael
what we're
Thomas
seeing.
Was like that in 2019 and 2018.
That's a great comparison there, where you knew who they were going to pretty much every play, every
on
clutch
a slant
spot. Yeah, and the route, right?
Yeah, the route too.
Yeah, with Davante Adams, I mean, he runs every route in the book. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And again, my favorite stat, expected fantasy points. He's just in another world compared to the rest of the wide receiver core. That's all you need to know about that. And he's not even overperforming expectations right now.
That's
there are
crazy.
touchdowns to come. There are big games. There is positive regression possible here, which is just insane to think about, comparing him to the rest of the receivers on this slate and really in the league. So absolutely never telling you to go away from Davante Adams or Aaron Rodgers in a skinny stack. It gets really tough after that, especially when you consider that the Chicago Bears are pretty up there in the league in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to opposing offense, meaning they're tough for opposing offenses. I don't think you see that fantasy point total go away from Adams and Rodgers. I think it goes away from the auxiliary options. It's still easier to pass on the Bears than it is to rush.
Matt, I want to just a reflexive reaction from you, no thinking at all, just what your gut tells you. Will Davante Adams be the wide receiver 1 by the end of the season?
Yes.
Okay. That was pretty easy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he will be too. Like
opportunity
you said,
on a different level.
Yeah. Because Tyreek Hill's amazing, but he's going to have plenty of games that are just meh because they have options. They don't have any other options in Green Bay. That's the crazy part. The run game, to me, there are going to be weeks where I'm willing to get to Aaron Jones as a pivot, but I'm really a little bit concerned right now. A.J. Dillon has been getting opportunities, and he's getting involved in the passing game, which I didn't anticipate. In college, he was not used at all in the passing game. Now he is. I know you talked about it a little bit, but is there any interest for you in tournaments for this backfield?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm seeing a player in Jones, 3rd among running backs on this slate in expected fantasy points, 4th in salary. Projection right in line with salary-based expectations. Great offense, expected to win. You can play the running backs. And one thing I will say, I did hear some coach speak coming out of last week's game that they wanted to get A.J. Dillon more touches. One of the things I like to do sometimes, and we have no reason to fade a player other than the fact that a coach said they wanted to give their backfield mate more touches, that makes me lean on Jones a little bit more, not a little bit less, since the field will think, well, they're going to give Dillon more touches. What evidence do we have?
Yeah, you're right. With Chicago, this passing game is just gross to me right now. I think they might have to throw. Honestly, if they do, I'm just going down to Darnell Mooney. That's what I do. Like if I'm going, it's a shame. I'd love to get to Allen Robinson, but Darnell Mooney would be the guy. I have no problem really getting away from this team entirely, though. I really am not fond of the fact that Khalil Herbert had 18 attempts last game. Damian Williams was involved, sure, 16 carries. They had the lead over Vegas. I do believe he'll be the clear pass catching back, but it's a mess in Chicago right now on a low passing volume offense that even if forced to throw more, I don't know if Justin Fields is going to be able to be accurate enough to make things work. So maybe some sprinkles of Darnell Mooney for me, Matt, but I don't really have much else. Maybe a share of Cole Kmet here and there, but I don't like this too much.
Yeah, it sounds like Damian Williams is hurt, so maybe Khalil Herbert, who did get more of a snap share and opportunity share in the second half last week, sees even more this week. But yeah, as you said, this is a low volume offense and a low efficiency offense all over the board, really. Justin Fields isn't even rushing right now, so we don't have that upside. It does look like he's going to play. It did for a moment seem like he might be in danger of missing, but Allen Robinson's usage is so far down that even though he's wide receiver 42 among all wide receivers on this slate in points per game right now, he's not even underperforming expectation that much. His expectation is that low, that middling. So I agree with you. Mooney is the only one who has projections ahead of salary-based expectations. And yeah, good luck on Cole Kmet. I guess I'll just correlate it to the high-powered Packers offense to the other side.
Sucks, man, but here we are, right? There's not much else to say. Steve Buzzard, I just saw an alert from him. He is in the office hours over on our premium Slack chat right now. Buzzard, a Millie Maker winner. The dude has won an insane amount of money playing, feels like every DFS sport. Just has an incredible process. If you're a premium sub and you want to hop in and ask some questions for Steve, he answers. That's why I always bring this up on Thursdays, Matt, because he answers all of them. Like, he's so good about that, and he wants to help people get better. That's what our office hours Slack chat channel is for. We have a great community there and other channels, of course, but check that out. And if you want to take a look at Awesemo, use the promo code NFL Strategy Show, all caps, all one word. Jordan will put it in the chat and on the screen. Get 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. That's everything on the site, not just football, baseball, hockey, which just started up. Use the promo code CROSSCHECK if you just want hockey. You'll get everything for NHL for just $3 this week. But PGA, MMA, NASCAR, everything. Okay. Esports, baseball, basketball's coming up. Check it out. 25% off. You got Top Stack tool, ownership, player projections, the boom bust tool, the lineup builder, the premium Slack chat, everything of which, well, Slack wasn't built by Alex Baker, but all of the tools built by the #1 ranked DFS player out there, Awesemo himself. Won a lot of money playing with these exact tools. And I don't know, Matt and I use them all the time. The top plays tool for Showdown. There's so much in there that you'll get lost, but in a good way. So check it out. NFL Strategy Show, all one word. And if you want to go yearly, weekly, annually, you even want to do an express pass for less than $4 a week, all of our Showdown content and tools included, plus main slate stuff, you can do that too. Go to awesemo.com/join. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter. My DMs are open. All right, man. What do we got? 4 games to go here?
Hey, I had a question. Is it possible to trade someone on a franchise tag? Because I would love to see Allen Robinson traded. Is that doable? I don't know enough about the salary cap.
I don't know, actually.
Get him out of there.
Yeah, get him out of there. And as much as it pains me to say it, get Miles Sanders out of Philly where he can be used as well.
Kenny Gainwell time. And then, gets Sanders to a place where he can be utilized. I'd love to see him in LA. Like, he's better than Darrell Henderson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There are some teams that if you put
Kansas City.
Miles Sanders on, he would be dominant.
Absolutely.
But maybe we'll never see it, Matt. I hope we do. I hope he escapes because I feel for the guy. He deserves more opportunities. Well, Davis Mills proved that maybe his opportunities weren't all in vain last week because he went over 100 yards or 300 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. That was the most shocking, for me at least, Matt, the most shocking performance of the week. And it was even more shocking when you consider the fact that Brandon Cooks was an afterthought in that game. But I'm not getting hyped up here at all. I'm still very much not looking forward to targeting much of Houston whatsoever. If you want to get to a little Brandon Cooks, that's fine with me. Aside from that, I'm not buying into Chris Moore or Chris Conley or any of that. So maybe you have a different opinion.
Oh, you didn't play all the Chris Moore or Chris Conley you could last week?
I'm afraid not.
I'm afraid not, right? Yeah, I mean, look, Chris Conley now has a projection that's inside the top 36 wide receivers on this slate. And he's wide receiver 60 in terms of salary at 3.3K on DraftKings. That is a you could do worse situation if I've ever seen one. And Brandon Cooks still has a projection that's ahead of salary-based expectations. So I think you could, do this really, really ugly stack against the Indianapolis Colts defense that is just playing complete scrubs in the secondary. And I think Xavier Rhodes is hurt again. Right now, they are starting to compete with the worst defenses in the league. Not quite at Detroit level, but they are at Washington football team level and Jacksonville Jaguars level in PFF's coverage grade right now. And they got more banged up in week 5 than they previously were. I'm not saying the Houston Texans are suddenly a world beater, but I don't know. If there's going to be no one playing him in large field tournaments, you could get leverage by going here. I don't know how I just talked myself into the Houston Texans, but the Colts defense is bad.
They are really bad. I like Brandon Cooks. I just don't think there's much need to play Davis Mills. I mean, I could go to Heineke at plus 600. I know the ownership is going to be a lot different, but for me, it's just really, really difficult to see any path to being a top stack on a slate like this. They may not need to be if you get great options, high pay up options around them. Sure, but we have them as 0.5% top stack probability on the slate. Not great. You like the Colts here?
Here's the one thing I do like to see. Michael Pittman mossing people for touchdowns. I mean, I thought of you on Monday night when we saw Michael Pittman just absolutely.
Oh, that catch, man. How awesome was that?
Because that is like picture perfect for what they envisioned Pittman bringing to that offense.
What we've been hoping for. Yeah.
Exactly. And T.Y. Hilton's practicing. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Over the top of 2 defenders and then powers through contact into the end zone. That was that type of alpha type catch that you're looking for from a Pittman. When I saw that, man, my eyes lit up.
Mm-hmm. That's the type of talent you can only get in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. That was awesome to see. That simple as that.
T.Y. Like Hilton's back. J.J. Whiteside.
Yeah. Tutu Atwell. Yeah. Good luck to both of them improving. But the big thing with the Colts is that I was wrong looking at their backfield. They are definitely going to use Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack in the passing game more than I expected, which leaves Nyheim Hines kind of out in the dust. If he's not going to get consistent usage in the passing game, he's moving more towards just a gadget player that is ace on special teams, really. But this passing game looked improved with Carson Wentz at the helm, as we kind of mentioned earlier. His projection is now, kind of ahead of salary-based expectation. What can I say? And that offense is getting healthier. So they're playing the Houston Texans. They are certainly not going to be forced to score from a game environment standpoint, but the Texans are a pass funnel defense that allows more than average schedule-adjusted fantasy points. So the Colts are certainly a team that I don't hate stacking when I'm making multiple lineups in tournaments.
Yeah, we were both wrong about Hines. We went 1 for 1 on props, though. Ricard under 1.5 receiving yards, nailed it. But the Hines one was over 2.5 receptions. It's set up well for him, but Taylor took that 76-yarder to the house on a reception, and Hines was targeted 1 time on the day, and I don't even consider it a target. It was Carson Wentz trying to evade a sack and just threw it away, and he was in the vicinity. So, yeah,
I believe he actually had a catch called back because they accepted an offsides penalty as well.
You're right. So I guess they balance out. We'll give him 1 target on the day, but not what I would have anticipated. So I don't know, man. Jonathan Taylor is still. I was getting pretty frustrated with people acting like Jonathan Taylor's no good early in the year. The guy's good. Okay, he's good, and if he's involved more in the passing game, he's going to, for fantasy purposes, be really good. So we knew that, Matt, the regression would come in touchdowns, just given the insane allotment of goal line carries he had. If you want to play Jonathan Taylor this week, I don't think anyone's going to tell you shouldn't. It's a good matchup, and they could take a big lead here. And this is an absolute must-win game for the Colts. I like Pittman, too. I'm happy to go to Pittman. I don't love the stacking options here in terms of the whole team, but I love one-offs for the Colts, and I think that's where I'll go this week. And yes, Hilton's back at practice. They have a few weeks to actually activate him to play. I would be shocked if he played this week.
I thought I saw a tweet from like Schefter or Rappaport that was like, Hilton is coming off IR and he could play as early as this week. Okay. Something like that.
All right. Well, we'll pay attention to it. I'm assuming he'll be limited, and I still like Pittman anyway. So, All right.
Yeah.
Where are we at? Let's go to, here's a good one. Dallas and New England, Matt. First one from the 4 p.m. wave of games. Only 3 4 p.m. games this week. The Dallas Cowboys on the road, 3.5-point favorites. New England snuck a win out against Houston. That was ugly last week. 52-point total. I want to know where you stand on guys like CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, who have just kind of been relegated to a role of, hey, you guys are amazing, but some weeks we just don't really need you.
Yeah, I am not going away from that level of talent on this high quality of an offense. This offense is just completely rolling right now. Dak Prescott has been efficient on a per pass basis, and the advanced metrics I look at, expected points added per play and completion points over expected per pass. He's top 10 in the NFL, right next to Tom Brady and Justin Herbert in those metrics. I mean, that is just fantastic company. So yes, Dalton Schultz and the running backs are going to take valuable opportunities sometimes, but the amount of valuable opportunities is just so high for this league, for this team compared to other teams in this league. I mean, Dallas right now ranks top 5 in expected points added per play offensively. And really surprisingly, they actually rank top 6 in defensive expected points added per play. That's a huge improvement. But because their offense is so consistently good, even when that defense is strong, their rating is because of turnovers. Opposing offenses are still sort of forced to score here. We'll see if Mac Jones can keep up. I have no questions about Dallas scoring points here, especially with Houston being able to get there last week against New England.
You're not wrong.
Maybe I'm just overusing a one-game sample, but they really surprised me.
I think there might be a slight overreaction, not just you personally, but I think a lot of times just because everything overreacts to 1 or 2 bad games. Like, I also think that there's going to be a considerable overreaction to that Browns and Chargers game as well. 89 total points. Maybe I'm wrong. It's definitely possible that I'm wrong, but you see it quite often. Like, people after the Eagles got smoked by Dallas and gave up a lot to Kansas City, the assumption was that Carolina would come in and score 35 points, but there's a lot of parity in the NFL, Matt, but we can only go off of what we know, right?
Yeah, actually that is a great segue to something I actually was hoping I'd be able to talk about. It's something I've been trying to bring into my process at the beginning of weeks. A really, really simplistic way of thinking through a game matchup is which of the 4 major phases, the 4 major units of a game, one offense A, defense B, and then the opposite, offense B, defense A, is going to be the most dominant phase of the game. And so in this case, I believe the Dallas offense versus the Houston defense is going to be the most dominant phase. New England defense is going to be the most dominant phase of this game. And that affects how I project the rest of the skill players there. If you feel a different way, like New England actually stymies Dallas, first of all, you'll be different from the field in the way you build your lineups, but it will affect the downstream projections for all your players. So I urge you to kind of think through games that way. As I said, I'm just not going away from this Dallas offense being the most dominant force here.
Oh, it's a great point. And I'm certainly not suggesting that either. I was merely suggesting that New England, I think the jury might still be out on this defense a little bit, just because they haven't faced very good teams either. Miami, New York Jets, Tampa. You could make the argument that Belichick knew what was going on with Brady, but they limited them to 19 points. That's still pretty good, right? And then New Orleans carved them up. And Houston dropped 25 on them. So who the hell knows, man? What we do know, though, and this is where I think your point is a salient one, is that we know the Cowboys offense is really damn good. And which advantage would you rather have in the event that you're wrong? Say you're wrong about New England's defense and they're actually good. You can't really be wrong against Dallas offense. We know for sure that they're dominant. So the question for me isn't if you want to target them or if they're good, but it's, do you go to Elliott? Do you go to Lamb? Do you go to Cooper? Do you go to Dalton Schultz, who's thrown an entirely different wrinkle into this offense now that they have a legitimate red zone threat and someone they like to target and can get away from their outside guys with? You took Tony Pollard, like all of that. how do you go after this Dallas team is more important than if you like them, Matt. So I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I really like Ezekiel Elliott this week. Are you a little surprised that this spread is as close as it is? I feel like when I saw this spread just at 3.5 points, I kind of was taken aback because I feel like Dallas is a better team, maybe closer to a touchdown than a field goal. But if it were a larger favorite, I would think we would see more ownership coalescing around Ezekiel Elliott. I know that 7,100 price tag on DraftKings is pretty high, but I still see a player who's projected for more than his salary based expectations. I really think that we could have a situation where Elliott has a multi-touchdown game. Right now, he's at 3 points over expectation per game, and he's top 7 amongst all running backs in expected fantasy points. So, not to say that I'm going away from the Dallas passing game, but because of that uncertainty that Schultz has brought into it, I think Ezekiel Elliott has one of the most guaranteed opportunity shares on this high-powered offense that, yes, as you said, is spreading it out, but boy, are they scoring a lot. Number 2 right now in our adjusted pace of play as well. So there's plenty of plays to go around.
You want to know what's you asked if it's surprising to me? What's surprising to me is that Dallas could be a 3.5 point favorite, but this game has a 52 point total. See, that doesn't make sense to me, right? Because that suggests that the Patriots are going to be able to score a lot of points, and they just haven't been able to do that all year long. They're bottom 7 in scoring this year. Sure, it's a basic stat, but they're not putting points on the board. They simply aren't. So that's the weirdest part to me. If you were to say this game, by the way, it opened at 48. If you were to tell me that they're 3.5 point favorites and the game had a 46 point total, I'd say, okay, 2 teams, somewhat of a defensive battle. You're looking at like a 25 or 24 to 21 game or whatever, right? Fine. But 52 points? Doesn't that seem a little bit high given that the Patriots offense has kind of been stalling for 5 straight weeks?
Yeah, well, absolutely, especially because they're implied for 24.25 points, and they've hit the over on that twice by hitting exactly 25.
Yeah. Against Houston and the Jets.
Yeah, I think that's more of a perception of Dallas defense because people don't realize that Dallas's defense, at least on a per play basis, has been much, much better this year.
I'm betting the under, Matt.
Yeah, I think that's a solid bet.
I don't think, and I know you're with me on this, I don't think Dallas's defense is stellar, but I don't think Dallas's defense is, we're going to project the Patriots for basically the most points basically the most points they've had all year. So yeah, I don't know.
Something seems off about that to me.
Something seems a little off. I'm with you. I'm glad you brought that up because then I looked at the total and thought, what the fuck? That doesn't make much sense at all. Do you like anything for New England this week?
I mean, I guess if we just trust Vegas that they're very good at their job, then suddenly we have a team in New England who is going to go at least 2 or over their current offensive ceiling that we've seen. And that simply might be because we're really right about Dallas's offense being so dominant that they just have to score 27, 28 points to even be remotely close in the second half of this game. I'm not saying that's the most likely outcome here, but if it is something that occurs, then somebody's going to have to score to get them there. We could see a dreaded 3-headed monster here with Damian Harris. He's been a DNP. We're really not sure where he is in the middle of the week, but Brandon Bolden has kind of taken that James White role, and Ramondre Stevenson might be more involved. None of these are really appealing to me. Jacoby Myers is probably the only one that has any sort of real appeal. Right now, he's projected inside the top 10 wide receivers on the slate, and he has a salary of just $5,500 on DraftKings. That's a fine value. He's becoming a once-in-a-generation player for a terrible reason. There have only been 4 players since the merger that have as many yards as Jacoby Myers and have yet to score a touchdown.
He doesn't have a touchdown since college. It's amazing.
You hate to see it.
It's really amazing. One day he will, Matt. One day he will. How many touchdowns are you projecting him for today or this week?
Yeah, 6 or 7. No, the real question, one of my colleagues pointed it out, is what we do when he scores. What kind of liquor comes out or something.
Yeah, I'm likely going to be drinking anyway. So people always laugh at me because I am pretty basic when it comes to drinking, Matt. I don't need the fine stuff. What happens is I buy some great stuff and then I just bring all my buddies over and it's gone in a night. So what's the point? You know what I mean?
Apparently like 95% of the country's liquor is consumed within a day of its purchase.
Sure. I mean, I always have a bottle sitting around just in case, but I'm fine with some Jack or some JMO. Man, I don't complain. A little 1800 tequila. I don't have to go crazy.
I'm with you, man.
It all serves the same purpose, by the way.
Yeah. The objective remains the same.
Right. So does the result. All right. Let's talk about the final 2 games. Jordan, by the way, screw you for doubting me, my friend. We are going to get there. By the way, Jordan did not ask for us to get out early. I offered it, as a gratuitous gesture. And he just, told me to go away, but I'm doing it anyway. Oh, Matt,
wait, you got -1 on the eloquence points because it was a gracious gesture, but it wasn't gratuitous.
Why not? I'm tipping him. I'm tipping him for his service.
Isn't gratuitous like over the top? You're not over the top. You're being incredibly kind.
I guess, but like gratuity at a restaurant is a tip, right?
All right. This has been.
No, you might be right. I'm saying
with Matt and Dave.
You might be right. It's very possible that you're right. Gracious is accurate too. But
all right, I'm going to ask Miriam right now. Miriam Webster. What is?
Sorry, right. Jordan. We're not getting out of here at 12:30.
Yeah, that's it. Given or granted without return or recompense.
So that works.
Unearned.
Totally unearned. That works though, right? Yeah. No?
All right, I'll give it to you. You don't lose the point.
What do you mean gratuitous? I'm giving something to Jordan. I'm giving him, some time off. How is Matt right? I don't understand. Whatever. Let's keep going, Matt. Prize Picks. You can get up to $100 on your first deposit, Matt, just by signing up and using the promo code Awesemo.
That's amazing.
It's not bad, right?
Fantastic. Yeah.
It's amazing. AWESEMO. Up to $100 when you sign up for the first time. Jordan put it up on the screen now. This site's beautiful looking. And you've got to look at all those sports up there. I swear the other day, no, they do. They have disc golf. Like they have everything. It's crazy. An insane menu of props. It's a player prop site. You build lineups based off of it. You can pick up to 5 or as few as 2. And the way you do it is you just take the over or the under. And you don't have to worry about juice on either side of a bet. You just over, under. And I always say, check out other books, compare it to other spots. Use our player prop tool at Awesemo, which is totally free right now. Get the best edge that you can over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, download it in the App Store or the Google Play Store, whatever. If you correctly pick up the 5 correct players, you can net up to 10 extra entry fee. So, there's $100 deposit bonus. It looks good. You feel good. And there's props from everywhere. The free prop tool that we have at Awesemo, though, I think is the real kicker, Matt, because you don't have to pay to get research in.
It's unbelievable. And it's just our projections aligned with the current lines what else could you want?
Absolutely. Go to prizepicks.com or download it in the App Store, Google Play Store. Great place to build your bankroll and have a lot of fun. And use the research that you've already used for DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, betting, whatever. You don't have to go and do additional research. Just take that and parlay that into quality bets, quality picks over there at Prize Picks. All right, Matt, let's close this out with the final 2 games here. We have Arizona and Cleveland. See, are we just assuming this game is going to be a massive shootout after last week? Where are you at on it?
Well, okay. Here is one of the ways that we could have seen the Chargers-Browns game, which both of those teams have pretty well respected, most people consider above average defenses. And yet Just a massive, massive shootout. One of the things we look for is pace of play. Another thing we look for is high quality passing. And if not high quality passing, high efficiency offense in general. And that's really what helped that game get there, is because the Browns don't necessarily pass that often. They don't necessarily have that fast of a pace of play. But when Nick Chubb is breaking massive run after massive run, they're running up the score just as efficiently as a pass-friendly team that is also efficient would do. So the shootout potential is absolutely here for all those same reasons. You have a high-pace offense in the Arizona Cardinals, right now number 2 in our advanced stats tool in adjusted pace of play. And the Cleveland Browns could absolutely be efficient once again. But the Cardinals defensively, they're built a little bit differently, but they're right now top 4 in the NFL, toughest for opposing offenses in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. So I'm never going to say that Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt can't get there. They can't have breakaway runs in 2 games in a row, but it is a little bit of a lower probability than against the Chargers, who are strong overall, but they were absolutely leaning towards being a running back funnel last week. You could see that coming. You can't see it as much this week.
No, you absolutely can't. Would you say you have priority options in this game?
I don't love playing Nick Chubb in tournaments because the way he gets there is so low probability. Now, we saw it. He's an incredible rusher. I'm not taking anything away from the player. And I know if you've listened to this show before, you've heard us talk about this before. If you look at stats at breakaway run rate, juke rate, which is the amount of evaded tackles per touch, Nick Chubb is constantly fluctuating between top 1, 2, or 3. And
it's
all
him
of
and
those
Derrick
metrics.
Henry almost every year.
It's absolutely insane what he can do on a per rush basis compared to the rest of the league. Not saying that's not true, but because of his offense in general, ranking 29th in pace of play, it's never something that I really feel like I have to get to. And he's very often, because of his high salary, he's top 5 in running back salaries this week. You don't need his 24 or 25 points that he gets at that salary in order to get to the very top of tournaments. So not saying it's a bad play, but I think I'd rather play the passing game, take a shot on Odell Beckham finally coming through. Maybe if Jarvis Landry comes back, I believe he's eligible to return. But that's really only if I'm playing it with some sort of run back on the other side and probably trying to get Kyler Murray as my quarterback.
I'm with you. We talked about it on a couple of shows earlier this week. Strategy show every day of the week, and then Sunday it culminates in a 4-hour live stream leading up to 1 p.m. lock. So join us. If you love football as much as we do, we're here to talk about it all the time. Tonight we've got the deeper dive for the showdown slate, followed by live before lock. And just across the board, we're making things happen. You also have the NHL strategy show today, the Awesemo betting show on the odds channel. We're loaded with stuff here. Again, you guys are here because you love DFS. So if you're looking for any specific sport or you want to learn a new one, well, it's somewhere here on the channel or at awesemo.com. And can we get to 100 likes, please? We got 430 people watching, 90 likes. We need 10 to go. There's got to be 10 of you out there that feel they need to make some gratuitous gestures, Matt, and get us over that 100 like mark. Appreciate you. I know you'll get us there for sure. And subscribe to the channel. Thank you. All right, there we go. Boom, 100 likes. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Makes me feel good.
Yeah. On a slightly lighter note, we got to say thank you. We had almost 10,000 views on our matchup show last week. Seriously, guys, we know this is we really did. We had over 9K. Thank you guys so much. We know this is a long one, but we really believe that if you had just time for one show a week, that this would be the one to go into. We break down every game for you, but we just can't thank you enough for trusting us, for being here. Hope to give it back to y'all every week.
Absolutely. No question. Eloquently said.
Thanks, bud.
And thanks to Anthony Santiago for the super chat. Appreciate you, man. He put a noob gif in there, emoji or whatever the hell it is. I don't know who he's referring to. Probably Jordan. Last thing I'll say on Chubb, to follow up on what you mentioned, Nick Chubb, I love this guy. He's amazing. He's mega efficient. If you put him on a team that ran the ball as much as even like, honestly, even 70% as much as Tennessee does. Or if you just left him in Cleveland without Kareem Hunt, this guy is a top 3 running back. I'm telling you right now. That's just the way it is. Kareem Hunt's the RB6 right now. Think about that. In the league, he's the RB6. So imagine what Nick Chubb, who's the RB11, would be capable of doing if Kareem Hunt didn't have, 4 goal line carries and 13 red zone carries. It's frustrating, man.
Yeah. I mean, they're dissimilar players because we've seen Chubb do this now for multiple years in terms of efficiency. But as I said with our conversation about Mike Williams, these are the types of players that tend to burn me specifically because I am looking at efficiency compared to expectation. Seeing that player not regressing to the mean is something that I have trouble with, that you might call a blind spot. Whereas some of you who are more film focused or just go with your gut a little bit more, you're like, I'm playing Nick Chubb. He's a stud every time on the field. I totally respect your process if that's the way you want to go with it.
Okay. Mr. Go Blue says, Loughy, gratuitous works, but it wasn't the best word for that context. But it works. All right, Matt. Las Vegas and Denver close it out with a real barn burner here. 3.5-point dogs on the road. Vegas kind of, I don't even want to say they're in turmoil because everyone's running with that narrative. Who the heck, seriously, who knows? We don't know. We have no idea how this is going to affect them on the field this week. So I'm personally not doing anything about that. In case you heard, John, in case you didn't hear, I had a bit of a hubbub when it came to John Gruden over the past week. I don't get into any of that stuff. If it's not about football, we're not talking about it. Denver, the favorites at home, 44-point total. I'll let you wrap this up, Matt. Is there anything here that stands out from either side that you really like?
Not that I really, really like or really need to when you're talking about the lowest total game on the afternoon slate. I mean, there are some high quality options and superstar players. So if your early slate games are struggling and you're looking for likely low owned pivot plays because you need to get contrarian in order to save your day, there are some really good options here. We saw Cortland Sutton have a huge game, over 21.5 half PPR points. So even if a platform like FanDuel was fantastic, he's up to wide receiver 15 in expected fantasy points per game. And I still think that Javonte Williams' breakout game is going to come at some point. He hasn't been great on a per rush basis, but his evasion rate, his evaded tackles per touch has been really high quality, showing that when his time comes, I think he's going to be a breakout player. And what can you say? The Raiders, they have Darren Waller, so I'm fine going there when, you have Travis Kelce on the slate, but he's possibly injured. Right now, Waller has a projection that's exactly in line with salary-based expectations. So it's him and Jacobs, who's really been gobbling up all of the quality opportunities right now for the Raiders. But again, like you said, I'm really only prioritizing these plays if I have chalk options in my lineups and then I need to pivot away from them to be contrarian because my early slate didn't work out exactly how I wanted to.
All right. Well, Cortland Sutton's good, and I'm waiting for him to have this breakout game where he's got 2 touchdowns and 180 yards on 10 receptions. I don't know. Maybe it's a pipe dream, Matt, but he'll get there soon enough. What's he priced at?
Sutton right now.
Oh, he's up there.
Yeah, he's at 6,200, but didn't we just get a great game from him last week where that's what we got. We got 120 yards, one score, not 2, but 11 targets. That's healthy. That's the second most he's had all season.
Very good. But the only reason is they were kind of just like chasing in that game, and that was all late shitty points. But we'll take it. I think we can get a lot more of that in the future. Matt, great stuff as always, man. Follow him at Draftaholic, okay? On Twitter, Draftaholic. We got to get you over 1,000 followers, dude. It
hit literally this week, buddy.
Oh,
Thank you for all your help.
Good. Thanks,
I appreciate y'all too.
Follow me at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. And say thanks to our boy Jordan Klein with a K producing today's show. The man puts in the man hours, puts in the work. We get him out of here a little bit early today. How would you describe us, Matt?
I think it's only one word: gratuitous.
Very gratuitous, people. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe. We'll catch you back here for the next one. Peace.
See ya.